Hello and welcome to episode 345 of the Stacey West podcast. My name's Gary, and while the intro tune was playing, I realised I had my sound far too loud in my ears, and now I am a little bit deaf. Somebody who hopefully is not deaf and is going to give you some excellent insight on what was a horrible afternoon is this guy. He's that side. It's Chris Lamming. How are you, mate?
Hello. I'm all right. I'll be honest, wasn't particularly looking forward to doing this today because it's going to be a challenging one, isn't it? Let's not beat around the bush. It is going to be a challenging run. Aside from football, though, I've had a really good day. I've fallen in a bit of a rabbit hole. So my partner and her mum have both gone back down to Norfolk for New Year. So I'm home alone for a little bit. So I thought, brilliant, let's get the PlayStation turned on. I haven't played the PlayStation for ages. Need a new game. I really like motor racing games. I have found a new one called Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is a fantastic name. It's a racing sim.
Can you say that in your German accent?
Absolutely not, because it's Italian. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's made me want to buy the proper rig. I want a proper racing wheel and pedals and a seat and everything. Obviously, nowhere to put it in my house. But that's what I've been doing all day, other than researching for this. So it's been a lovely distraction, to be honest, away from a disappointing afternoon yesterday. How are you?
Good. Yeah, not bad. I haven't been sleeping particularly well over the last few weeks. So last night I did manage to get some sleep. So I stayed in bed this morning until 11:15. Then I had to get up and write what I am going to describe as yesterday's debacle. And then I've been into town to buy some running gear because today is the first official day of my London Marathon training. And I haven't run because I haven't had time. But I can do 3 runs a week, basically. So I'm going to do one on Tuesday, which is obviously New Year's Eve, one on the 2nd, and then one sometime after that. So, I've been in to get some new running gear, like a nice little skull cap and a couple of Under Armour tops. So there's nothing like spending money after Christmas. I've got a pair of Adidas trainers for Christmas, bought 2 more since. So that's all good as well. So yeah, it's all right. No, I don't run in my Adidas trainers. They are a fashion thing. So, but obviously yesterday I did make the trip down to Bolton with my good friends Matt, Dale, and Dave, which was interesting to say the least. We had a great day apart from the football. But how many times do you say that? And on an away day, you either win, lose, or draw. And the only times you ever come away and say that the football hasn't ruined it, really, is when you've won, and you win far fewer away games than you lose and draw. So you could probably say that 60% of away days, more or less, you come away going, well, that was a good day apart from the football. So that's what it was. But did you know, I didn't know this, 2 hours from Rugby to Bolton. That's not bad timing, is it?
That's incredible. I thought it'd be closer to 3, to be honest.
Yeah,
that's very good going.
And Matt's a good driver, so he wasn't even tanking it. But I got in the car. I hadn't had a cup of tea. I hadn't had any breakfast. I was literally and I had to wait. And when we got to Bolton, we walked from the ground about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, maybe, to actually find a pub to get some food. So I was having burger and chips for breakfast at 2 p.m, which I've heard athletes don't do that. I've heard that they're a little bit better with their nutrition.
Probably not. But that was before you was officially an athlete. Today, it would be inexcusable, but yesterday, absolutely fine.
Well, today I've actually had burger and chips again in Waitrose this afternoon on the way back because I like Waitrose's burgers. So, but it starts. I mean, I'm being flippant, but obviously that for everybody that has sponsored me so far, and those of you that will do, I think you'll find that I'll be much, much better after January the 1st. So, still an athlete. I suppose we're really going to have to talk about it then, aren't we?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Because we've got some good names in the comments. We've got just picking a handful out: Steve Jolland, Steve Barton, John Bates, Sue Imp, Harry Jackson. I know these people tend to be relatively balanced, and they're going to come on here to listen to our opinion. And if it differs, they're not going to be in meltdown, and if it's the same, then brilliant. So they're on here. But as Sue correctly points out, it's been a lively day on Twitter. I'm not going to go into that too much. I have vowed that I'm going to not interact with people quite as much on Twitter, just for the next couple of weeks, because it's easy to get angry. I don't want to get angry at people who have got different opinions to me, even if fundamentally those opinions feel wrong. And I say feel wrong because we're not always right. I mean, I know, I think I'm right all of the time, but everybody thinks they're right all of the time, don't they? So we're putting this podcast out today. These are our opinions. If somebody doesn't like them, brilliant, but just accept the fact that there are opinions and that they differ to your opinions. I think that's probably the best thing to say. The first opinion is that third kit is awful. I hate watching us playing it. We never win in it. And I think that's solely to blame for our bad away form. Chris, what's your opinion on
that? Let's blame it. Yeah, it's nice to have something to blame, isn't it? That feels easy and isn't kind of directly finger pointing at anybody. I quite like the kit, but you can't deny that we're crap in it. We are rubbish in the kit.
Now, you say obviously it's nice to be able to have somebody to blame. We are going to have that. But before we start playing the blame game, sorry, I'm shuffling screens around elsewhere there. It looks like I'm not interested, but I am. I am going to talk about the first half, because we always look for the silver lining in the cloud. Probably not always look for the cloud in the silver lining as much as we should. I actually don't think we were that bad in the first half. I thought they started well with a succession of corners. It felt like they were going to get on top, but the atmosphere was flat. The ground was quiet, and once the first 10 minutes went away, I thought we began to get a little bit of control. I'm not talking about us being all over Bolton. I'm not talking about us creating chance after chance after chance. But our first half XG, and I don't care if you like XG or not, it's a barometer. It's not a stat. I'm not rolling a stat out here. It was 0.61. We had opportunities, and up until probably 35 minutes, I felt that we were well in the game.
I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I was a nervy start. I think you can take the positives out of the first half, but it wasn't a slow start like it was a slow start against Shrewsbury, but Bolton were just really aggressive and pinned us in for a few minutes, and that was nervy. The only difference really is that they didn't take advantage of that compared to when Shrewsbury did take advantage of our slow start. But yeah, from then, I think we settled quite nicely. It's a tough place to go. I think Bolton obviously have had a bit of a hangover from the playoffs early season, and they've kind of been forgotten about a little bit. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league. I still maintain they were the best team in the league last season. I know that sounds silly to say about a team that didn't get promoted, but I think they were the most consistent team for the majority of the season. And they were unlucky not to go up. They'll definitely feel that. So it was absolutely not coming into this lightly. But yeah, we held our own. We were in the game. And I think we'd all have taken a point before the game, wouldn't we? And after an early scare or two, I think we settled into it quite nicely. We were clearly pretty aggressive, clearly on the front foot. The feeling I got from the players was that they really wanted to make a statement after a below-par performance on Boxing Day. I don't think you can be too up for a game, but if ever there's a criticism of the first half, and maybe that's the only criticism I'll give them, is that they were almost too in your face, too front-footed, too aggressive at times. But I'd rather that than be passive. Up until half time, we were well in the game. I did think Conor McGrandles was maybe a little bit lucky to escape with just a yellow card. That was a nasty looking challenge, but I think he was really disciplined after that. Yeah, on the whole, it was fine, wasn't it? It was a decent first half. And as the whistle went for half time, I think most of us were reasonably satisfied with how things had gone.
Well, there were some things I didn't like in the first half, and we're going to have to cover their goal. We can't kind of just... So I think we got to 35 minutes, and I was content at that point. And I think probably after their goal, that's where things started to go. I don't have a real problem with the McGrandles challenge. It's a booking. I've watched it back. It looked much worse in real time. Some referees send you off for it. I don't like Ross Joyce, by the way, the referee from yesterday, and I'll tell you why. Aside from yesterday's game, I'll cite some other instances where I felt that he's not good enough. And bear in mind, he's been a League One, League Two referee now since we came back into the Football League. And if you don't progress, it tends to be for a reason, I think. Unfortunately, I think that their goal was our own fault, because Pordy has dwelled too long on the ball on the outside of the area. Now, there are some supporters that will criticise him for that, but then also criticise him had he lumped it forward, kind of a big ball looking for the channel. So it is a no-win situation, but he has dwelt a little bit on the ball. They've won it, recycled it. We had a very brief exchange in the Stacey West Discord where I think Wickens should do better with that. And I'm not pointing blame, because actually I think generally outside of that one moment, George Wickens had a decent game again yesterday. I thought he looked to command his area relatively well. He made one or two saves. There's not a lot you could do about the other two goals. The first goal for me changes the game, because at that point, 35 minutes, I'll go to XG. Our XG has been far better than theirs. In the first half, theirs was something only like 0.08, even with the goal. So we had actually created the better chances. People won't see that because of what happened at half time, because of what happened in the second half. The first half kind of gets forgotten. And that's fair enough. If people want to forget that, then so be it. For me, the goal changes everything, because their supporters were quiet. The ground was quiet. I just felt that the whole thing was flat. Have I still got Chris?
Oh, technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen.
We're back.
Hello. Hiya.
How much of that did you get? I'll have to edit that out on the actual podcast.
Yeah, I heard up to George Wickens could have done better, but had a good game other than that.
Right, that's fine. Sorry, people, for that. If you're watching live, there you go. Peek behind the curtain. 11 minutes around then. I think he should have done better with that. But I think the goal changes the game. I think that obviously Pordy dwells on it too long. I think it's a shot from outside the area that really the keeper should be saving. Yeah, bobbled just in front of him. It's gone in off the post. Somebody had said in one of the chats, perfect placement. I don't think it was perfect placement. I think that it was literally just... It wasn't a fluke goal. It was a goal that we should have done better with. And that changes everything for me, because at that point, one or two players get petulant. At that point, the home crowd, which we could have turned like that, we could have turned them like a pint of milk on a warm day, because they were on edge. There was little boos ringing out when a couple of passes. I think it was Dacris Cogley on the right-hand side was absolutely awful. Like everything, I think it was him. Everything he tried to control went out. Their passing was poor. They weren't a good side. They've got good players. They're not a good side. Ian Ever, I don't think, will see the season out, even with that win, because he just doesn't have them ticking. And they've got Aaron Collins. They've got Dion Charles. They've got so many good players. But for me, that goal, and I'm interested to your opinion, it killed the last 10 minutes. It killed off the attitude that we needed to go on and win the game in one or two of our players. And that the likes of then Ethan Arahan and Ben House just began to get a little bit mouthy, which we're going to have to touch upon in a sec.
Yeah, we are. You're right. But yeah, I think let's touch on the goal. So as everyone here that's watching and listening knows, I'm very much part of the Goalkeepers Union. So I hate to kind of just point fingers at goalkeepers all the time. But I think George Wickens should deal with it personally. It won't go down as an at-fault goal. It won't be a goal that was directly his error. But should he have saved it? Yeah, I think so. In all honesty, I think I should have saved it. And I'm not a professional goalkeeper. I'd be disappointed if I let a goal in from that far out. Yeah. Well, partly. Would I give it the Jordan Pickford and say, why is he getting a free shot away from the middle of the goal, etc.? But in all honesty, for someone who was, he swiveled to shoot. It's not like he had a 5-yard run up and had a free shot at goal. He swiveled and swung a leg at it. And did he catch it nicely? Relatively nicely? Yeah, of course, posting in, bouncing before heading into the goal is always more difficult to deal with. But from a defender's perspective, you're normally pretty happy. If you're forcing an opposition player to take a shot from that angle with that body position from that range, you can be pretty confident that that's not going to end up in the back of the net. So I appreciate that some people has been a bit critical of the closing down, but in all honesty, like you don't mind teams shooting from there, from that kind of body position. You don't, and it went in, and it shouldn't have. That'll chalk up against George Wickens in terms of his goals prevented metric, which is not a metric that tells the whole story, but we used it to back up Lucas Jensen, and I imagine one big barometer as to why Lucas Jensen was bought for £500 million by Millwall, well, because he was the best goalkeeper in League One in terms of goals prevented. So again, from a metric perspective, that is all of the shots on target, all of the expected XG from the shots on target compared to goals conceded. Obviously, it's not only the goalkeeper that has an influence in that, but it's probably the most accurate that you can gauge goalkeepers on. George Wickens will get near enough a -1 for that, because the XG of that shot will have been like 0.02 or something. His goals prevented is -5.1 now this season. So in 1 or 2 games, you know, it doesn't tell the whole story. I think over half a season, it does start to tell a little bit of a story. Without anything being directly his fault at all this season, I think there is an element there of that's something that needs to be improved upon, because he does things really well. He makes big saves. He comes out really well at times. He was really brave a couple of times yesterday. He commands his area relatively well, bar a couple of nervy moments a couple of games ago. But there have been a few goals this season where he will have felt he could have done better. And I think that first one yesterday is another one of those.
Now, back in 2018, we drew 2-2 with Notts County. Do you remember the game? Lee Frecklington coming back and we drew 2-2. His first game returned. On that day, I wrote of Ross Joyce that he was an absolute shambles of a man, inept to the point where he defines the word rather than being described by it. Then when we drew with Accrington a couple of seasons ago, he should have sent a player off a penalty and he didn't. And then I wrote he added on just 2 minutes for multiple instances of faked injury, time wasting and the like. I'm not sure we would have scored, but I haven't seen a referee deal so pathetically poorly with a charade around him for a long time. This is a referee who has surpassed Seb Stockbridge in my mind as being rubbish. So let me ask you a question. Ethan Arahan was booked after being fouled. That's his first booking, according to Y-Scout. Now, I might be wrong. He was fouled. He's got up. He said something. He's been given a booking. I've tried to watch what happened at halftime. There are very few videos of it. It cuts off. The ball's been kicked to the referee. It's gone to Ethan. He's picked it up and then it cuts off. So I can't quite see what's happened. Whether he's not given the ball to the ref, whether he's dropped it on the floor, whether he said something, the referee books him again. Now it goes back to the game that we watched Boxing Day, Mal Benning. He's booked for time wasting and then he commits an atrocious foul and the referee is trying to keep it 11v11 and doesn't book him. If it was the other way round, we said fair enough. If it's the foul, he should be booked. The time wasting, then you would look over, because time wasting is discretionary. Just like something that you've said is discretionary. There isn't a guideline there that says if you call the ref inept, it's fine. But if you call him an absolute shambles of a shit show, it's a yellow card. Probably is because he swears. So with that in mind, before we go in two-footed on Ethan, is the referee slightly in the wrong here if the offence is something like chatting back or whatever rather than a foul to give him the second yellow card?
I think it's not black and white, is it? And that's what's frustrating here, because there is that ambiguity about it. Now, I think one thing that Michael Skubala said in his post-match press conference, and obviously we haven't spoken about the second half yet, so we're not quite at that point. But I think it's important to bring this up, is that he's been given, he has 2 versions of what happened. He has Ethan's version, and he hadn't even had the opportunity to speak to the referee at that point. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to go two-footed in on Ethan until we know exactly what was said and how it happened. Because if he had just been effing and jeffing to the referee, if he was just effing and jeffing at the referee and he hasn't learned his lesson, and the referee's even warned him on that first one, then there's no excuse whatsoever, and he probably deserves the criticism that he'll undoubtedly get. But with the track record that Ross Joyce has got, there may well be more to it. Now, does that mean that Ethan is completely innocent here? Probably not. But I would think it's worth just pointing out that we don't know the full story here. We don't know exactly what was said. And if it's a referee just trying to stamp some sort of authority who doesn't tend to get that during the actual kind of officiating of the game itself, and he almost tries to even things up that way. You know, we're trying to kind of piece a puzzle together here with lots of pieces missing, aren't we? But there's no denying whatsoever it massively changed the game. It's the defining moment of the whole match, and it's bloody annoying.
I mean, Ross Joyce has already booked Ethan once this season. So he knows what he's about. I am going to go. By the way, I am going to criticize Ethan in a minute. So if you're watching this or listening to this thinking, oh, here they go, they've got the rose tinted glasses out. I'm trying to give both sides of the argument. It's like the public speaking debates you used to do when you were at school, if you went to a school like mine, where you were given an argument, you had to form your argument around it. And then at last minute, they'd go, right, do the counter argument. I'm doing the counter argument. I think any normal referee at that point doesn't issue the second yellow card. That's what I think. But you've been given a yellow card. Why are you going over to the ref? You're not the captain. That's Pordy, who, by the way, was given a yellow card for saying something after Ethan had been fouled. I've watched that back. And the ref was so quick to get it out, booking him again for saying something. Clamp down on the fouls.
That's it. That's a frustrating thing. And I get why players get frustrated at that, by the way. I've been there myself. When a referee doesn't have control of the game, makes a poor decision, and doesn't want to talk to you as a player, and they just book you, and you're not really doing anything wrong. You're like, what am I supposed to do? And it is nothing more frustrating as a player than a referee that refuses to just talk to you and explain their decisions. And I get it from a player's perspective. I'm not defending it, but I completely understand. It's particularly with Pordy, when he's literally gone over there to ask the referee what seemed like a reasonable question. Yeah. And he's just booked him and said, don't talk to me. And it's like, just shut down straight away. So there is an element of Ros Joyce making a rod for his own back here. But from Ethan's perspective, if you're booked, he was fouled. He was the one that was fouled, and he got booked off the back of that. That should never happen. But once that has happened, you know what sort of person the referee is, and from that point of view, just don't go and speak to him at half time. Like, there is legitimate criticism here, even if Ros Joyce has had a massive role to play in this, and he is at fault to an extent. Obviously, Ethan should not have gone and spoken to him second time round. But yeah, I think there are two sides to every story. But yeah, he's not going to come out of it looking particularly good, no matter what happens, is he, Mr. Arahan? Sadly, because we both rate him hugely as a footballer.
15 fouls, 5 bookings for Lincoln, 12 fouls, nothing for Bolton. Now, again, I'm not using that as an excuse, but if you're a player and you've rightly, by the way, seen McGrandle's booked, I'm not 100% convinced, if I'm honest, about the Ben House booking, the more I look at it. But, I mean, there was once or twice where our players were taken out off the ball. And do you know what? Whatever, fair play. It's not like it was an Odafin assault or anything. Bolton that's one thing we've known Bolton do under Ian Evatt. We've praised them for being a mix of dark arts and everything else. They're good at what they do, and I'm not being critical at all. But I just think that I actually think Ros Joyce was wrong to send Ethan off, but I think Ethan was doubly wrong to go over there. And for me, that the game ended there. And any analysis we do from here onwards, again, it kind of goes back to, there was a game a couple of weeks ago where me and you did this. It was the Rotherham game. Everything goes back to that one moment. It goes back to that moment because we were never going to get anything against Bolton at 10 versus 11. They're not a brilliant side, but with 11 players of the quality that they have on the field, with one extra player, with the home crowd finally sensing that they might be turning a corner, they might get something, which you wouldn't have picked up in the ground because it was actually quite quiet. It was never going to happen. And I don't want to just blame Ethan, and we don't know what happened. We've got no clue whatsoever exactly what happened, but something did. And if he's down the tunnel and not stood in front of Ros Joyce, he doesn't get booked. Whether Ros Joyce should have tried to keep it 11v11 or not. And I think that's the criticism. It's not what he said. It's not what he did. It's that he put himself in that situation. It's like it's like if I go out on a night out and I put myself in a dangerous situation for one reason or another, whose fault is that? It's not mine, is it? Do you know what I mean? If I go out in London and then I start walking around Brixton waving wads of tenors about, I might get mugged. You can blame the mugger, but if I'm not there waving my wads of tenors around in a place where I'm likely to get mugged, do you know what I mean? So you can look at it as I'm kind of at fault for that. And I'm not saying, I mean, that even sounds a bit like victim blaming, but yeah, I just...
No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. If he didn't go and speak to me, he wouldn't have got sent off. He created the situation himself. Even if the point he wanted to make to the referee was 100% correct and valid, don't speak to him. We've got the second half to be able to put things right. And Michael mentioned in his post-match press conference, they were really confident about being able to push on in the second half. Saw a couple of little tactical tweaks that they could do. We're often better in the second half, not every game, but we are often better in the second half than first half. And Michael and the team are really good at making those tactical tweaks midway through the game. And we do often see improvement in the second half. Also, there's that 15 minutes to cool down. If tensions have gone up, tempers have risen. There's that little cool-off period where everyone can refocus, but directly after half-time, that just changes the game. So, yeah, honestly, it went into half-time, saw that happened. I said, Joe came to mind to watch the game, and he said, I said to him, I'll take 3-0 now. Just don't want to get embarrassed. As long as it's not more than 3, we can move on, because we were never getting anything out of the game. There were some games and some teams where you go down to 10 men and you think, no, we can still deal with this. We can get something out of this. But obviously, Burton last season, when Alex Mutcher got sent off early, was a prime example of that. But you can't beat Bolton. You can't play against Bolton. Already 1 goal down, 10v11. It was a matter of how many they'd score, not whether we'd get anything out of it. And the lads performed admirably, by the way, in the second half. Cannot criticise effort, application, discipline as well, particularly Conor McGrandles, once again, after picking up a yellow in the first half, didn't put a foot wrong after that, really. And he had a tough game against Shrewsbury, by the way, Conor McGrandles, so that was a disciplined performance after that. Yeah, no one can be criticised for the second half, but they were put in a position by a teammate, ultimately. And Michael said he'll deal with it internally. I 100% believe he will. I trust him to be able to deal with it, but I also do not want us to be throwing Ethan Arahan under the bus because he's made one mistake, and because he's our best player, and he's still the player that's most likely to make us £1 million, the first player in Lincoln City history. And anyone saying that we should just sack him off and he should be sacked and he should never play for the club again, it's just really reactionary. I understand the anger. I understand the frustration. You want someone to blame. There's an obvious person to blame. It is his fault, ultimately. He has made a big error, but no one's going to know that more than Ethan. He's his own biggest critic. We've seen that firsthand. You mentioned it a couple of matches ago when he beat himself up for misplacing a single pass against Reading. He's his own biggest critic. So obviously it's disappointing and frustrating. But yeah, we were never getting anything out of the second half. So I don't know if there's anything specific you want to talk about in the second half, because if you want to talk about the goals, you can. I'm not really bothered, to be honest, because I'm just pleased that we didn't let in more than 3, in all honesty.
I don't really have that much to say about the second half, because Bolton were infinitely better. I think we had 1 shot off target. I don't think we had the tools on the bench to do what we needed to do. And I don't know what those tools would have been anyway. I don't know, maybe something of more of a target striker, but if you're bringing a Fred on and knocking the ball to him, you still need to have the 2 up top. We obviously tried to make changes around certain players. I think towards the end of the game, I think there was a bit of damage limitation. Like, let's just bring Tendai off because we've got a big game coming up. We ain't going to win this. I think we didn't throw the towel in, but it was near enough. But when, if you're 3-0 down, 10 men, you ain't going to win the game. So you may as well do that. And I know that people who go away go, well, it's an insult because we've all gone and we were at the stand and all that sort of stuff. I didn't care at that point. 67 minutes, I was ready for home. And that's not because I'm a proper supporter. It's just because, well, this game's done, isn't it? I didn't go on 67 minutes, by the way. But, the second half was, and I don't use this very often, from a fan's perspective, it was woeful. Because we just couldn't get out. They were a good side. They just controlled everything. And that was all there was to it. So I don't want to talk about the second half, but it would be remiss not to mention something that was going on in the stands behind me. And it does reignite a debate we've had on here before and we'll have on here again. And that is standing up or not sitting on the seat at an away game. And the antagonist in this situation is Bailey Cadamartri's dad, Danny. My light has just gone off. So somewhere behind me yesterday, there was a bit of a commotion, and that commotion was being caused by Bailey Cadamartri's dad, who wanted to sit down 3 rows from the end, and there was people in front of him who wanted to stand up. And it's actually carried on Twitter. I've seen Jack Mulhall's had a couple of exchanges with him as well. And it opens up this age-old debate. First of all, you can't really be offering supporters out. If it was a normal supporter offering a normal supporter out, I think more may have been done. I'm not privy to exactly what happened. I know Jack was stood to the side of it. I think there was 5 people that were stood up with someone behind me. What I will say is, wherever I am in a stand, if I want to stand up, but the people behind me are sitting down, I'll sit down. And I'll only stand up. I'll only then, if the people in front of me don't sit down, then I would have to stand up and turn around and go, look, these guys aren't sitting down, so I'm going to have to stand up. firmly believe if I buy a ticket with a seat number on it, I should sit in that seat. Likewise, if I bought a singing section seat ticket and I went in the singing section, I wouldn't expect A, to be in my seat, or B, to be sitting down. If I buy a normal attendance ticket anywhere else, I expect to be able to go into my seat and I expect to be able to sit down. And that's not just because I want to sit down away and all that sort of stuff. You're not a proper supporter if you don't stand up. It's because I want to sit down and watch a game of football. So I don't know the ins and outs of this. I don't know whether it was a singing section or not. I don't know whether people were in their right seats or not. I don't know what the crack was. I saw Danny Canamatri basically saying there were 7 of us, we wanted to sit together. There was a block of 7 seats directly behind me, so there was plenty of other seats if they had wanted to move. But it's just another little bit of an unpleasant story from what was a really shitty day, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's maybe the sort of thing that doesn't even happen if what's happening on the pitch is positive, because everyone's focus is elsewhere, isn't it? But it's not really a debate. So we've had this debate before. For me, it's not a debate because I agree with you 100%. So there's not a lot else for me to add here. You know, I didn't see what happened. I didn't experience it myself. So I can't really comment here. I think it'd be a bit crass of me to have an opinion when I didn't really witness it at all. So, but yeah, what you just said, I agree with that, to be honest, mate.
And another point, by the way, about Bolton, and this is really, it didn't wind me up as such, but it just goes to show what type of club we are compared to what type of clubs others are. Their fan zone's home only. So they've got this big fan zone, loads of food, loads of beer, all that sort of stuff. We weren't in colours. The 4 of us went. They had to see your tickets to get in the fan zone. I showed them the ticket and they said, no, home fans only. All the pubs, there's a Harvester near, home fans only. I get it with pubs, but the fan zone, and he's like, oh, you can get a beer in the ground. That's fine. You could go in the concourse, you could get a beer. But like, I've seen pictures of this is me, the hungry me. I've seen pictures of on the Footy's-gram Twitter where they do like chicken tikka chips or something, and they look really nice. You go under the stand and it's just like bog standard pies and stuff. So what, all their good food's in the fan zone. And I know, because we were talking and said, it's not normally a nasty fixture. It is, because they came to our club, didn't they, and smashed up some of them smashed up the blue, the anchor, tried to get in the anchor or whatever. But I just thought, a big club like that, there's not even an away fan zone. We provide an away fan zone, and don't we? There's food stuff down near the away end, and at the home end, away fans can get in. And it's just, yeah, nice ground, by the way. I quite like it.
It's a lovely ground. It's better on the outside than it is on the inside.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But it's decent.
Nice,
but yeah, I agree with you. It's poor. That's the same from last season. I think it was criticised, wasn't it, as well? And it's because that sort of thing's becoming more and more rare now. I think fan zones themselves are becoming more common. And you tend to see clubs that do have them tend to allow away fans in more often than not. So they've been kind of left behind a little bit there. A fair play to them for the £10 tickets, by the way. Obviously they got a lot of criticism last season for charging 30 odd. So the fact that they charged away fans £10, I think is fair play. Yeah. As much as it's a disappointing day, those that went wish they'd maybe saved their tenner and their petrol fees and whatnot. But yeah, credit where it's due. Have some balance. Anything else on Bolton?
No, all I'd say is it was a decent day out with the lads, but if I'm honest, I could have found something much better to do, I think, during the day. But there we go. What we'll do, we'll take a quick commercial break, and we will be back after, where we're going to have a little bit of a chat about 2024, go into Rotherham, and then finish with a little tribute to a fantastic Lincoln City servant. We will be back shortly. Right, let's have a look through some of these comments for those of you that are watching on YouTube.
Yeah, and I appreciate, we probably should have mentioned this before we start recording, but before we do Rotherham in 2024, we're going to just quickly touch on, obviously we're on a dodgy run at the moment. How do we feel about that? How are things?
Is that what you meant in the private chat?
Yeah,
I didn't know what you meant in the private chat. I thought you meant about looking forward. So we'll do that. We'll have to do that quickly as well. Yeah, we'll squeeze that in, mate. So we've got Steve Jollins, Steve Barton, hello. Andy Pandy, who is a fictional character. John Bates, evening. Next Gen Base, that's Benjamin, evening. Stu, I'm not sure if that's Stu Wells, judging by the cab, probably not. So hello. Sue's on board. Sue, you're right. Harry Jackson is on board. We won't be answering questions particularly here. Hope you're both well, yes. and had Tequila Rose for a while. Although we only have a small range of results to go on, should we be worried that Skubala seems to struggle with results when the weather isn't warm? No. We often struggle in black kits. We introduced one in 05-06 and didn't win in it for over a year. Isn't that the kit we won away in at Mansfield when we won 4-2 and Jamie Forrester got a hat-trick?
Oh,
No, we got all 4.
Was that the Sports TV one, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I quite liked that. Dean Mason, if we blame someone, then it's his fault for ordering a cappuccino and Belgian fridge cake in Byford's at Holt. Is Byford's the one that burned down? No, that was Budgeon's, wasn't it? Byford's is the posh one. I like Holt. Holt's good. Dom's on. Evening. Sue says the ref should have used discretion and warned the ref and warned him. Yep. Dale Warner. Yes, 100%, Gary. That's what we like to see. Someone agreeing with me. Ethan shouldn't have done it, but the ref is there to make sure the game is as fair as possible. The ref did seem very one-sided. Good point. All teams looking at Ethan may rethink. We've got Malk S. He remembers us getting kicked off the park at home to Bolton, disliking Ian Evatt as much as Steve Evans, which getting them back-to-back is quite ironic. Edward Walker wants to know, is Suckbal in worry about getting sacked? Nope. Ben says Ipswich fan zone was the same. Sod all for away fans anywhere near the ground. We get into it. It was the kit we won at Mansfield Inn, says Kate. Byford's is owned by a girl from Lincoln, says Dean. And Steve Jollins is a massive Skubala fan, but how much further forward are we now to when he took over statistically? Much further forward, but don't get Chris started on that because I have pizza to cook in the next 45 minutes. So anything you wanted to pick up on quickly there, Chris, before we go back into the...
Not directly, nothing that we're not going to talk about now in the main pod. So we'll probably touch on some of those things there in our next discussion anyway.
I'll bring us back in on 36.
Yeah.
45.
So
with a little
two things really.
In.
Oh, sorry. We'll have to maybe do 37. So 2 things. Because I want to touch on the whole, because just leading on from Bolton, the Dissent, because there's a stat on that which is interesting. And then obviously just the season so far. So,
what was the first one? Bolton?
Dissent generally this season. So there's an interesting thing on that.
Okay, hang on. We'll go in 37-10. Hello and welcome back. If you are listening in at home, if you're not listening in at home, you've just heard me and Chris bickering slightly, potentially about what we're going to do next. But if you are listening at home, you've just heard an advert for somebody that paid for the Stacey West dinner at Mowgli, which was very, very good indeed. Highly recommend it if you wish to go. So we are going to move on now. And the first thing we're going to move on to is Dissent, because Chris, and this is going to shock literally nobody, has a stat on it. Chris, take it away.
Well, yeah, the question I was going to pose to you is, do we have a problem with it, really? And, Ethan obviously has got sent off with it, so it's a talking point now. Hordy got booked for doing it before. Ben House has been booked multiple times for talking back at the referee. I suppose the general consensus for me was, everyone does it, don't they? But is it getting us in trouble? And is it getting us in trouble more than some other teams? So the question I've got for you really is this something that we do need to address team-wide, not just Ethan Arahan? Is it something that's actually maybe causing more negative than positive? Okay. We all criticise Chris Maguire, by the way, for his antics in that regard. So, yeah, thoughts on that before I give you some numbers. Let me ask
you a question. So you've got numbers, so I'm going to give you a thought on it. I don't know the numbers, and then my thought could either be proven or disproven. This is a real change of a turn of events because I don't normally get put in this sort of position.
Yeah, it's normally the way around, isn't it?
Yeah, my honest answer is I think we pick up too many bookings for Dissent, and I think that in the first part of the season, for instance, Ethan Arahan served a ban when he need not serve a ban. And now he will serve another ban when he need not serve a ban for Dissent. So whether the numbers say that we are above average or not for Dissent is one thing that I don't know. But I do believe that 1 or 2 players, and it is only 1 or 2 players, have not an issue, but have picked up too many bookings for Dissent that have impacted us at certain moments in the season. So yes, I think it's something that, aside from Pordy O'Connor, needs reining in from 1 or 2 players. Hit me with the numbers. Am I wrong or right?
You're right. 100% right. And my opinion before this was obviously Ethan needs to button it.
1 minute.
Against
Stu Wells, can you clip that up? Chris saying I'm 100% right. Go. Carry on. I'll make a note of the time.
Yeah, timestamp every second of that. Yes, so there's a very interesting metric what website says on who scored, which basically marks every booking, every card that's given, and what they were given for. So there's unprofessional, which is basically time wasting. That's all that is in that degree. There is fouls, and there is other. So other would include management getting bookings, by the way, for having a go at the lino or whatever. But also, can you think of many other examples where you can get a yellow card, which isn't a foul and isn't time wasting on the pitch?
Taking your shirt off after scoring.
Yeah, so maybe there's going to be one or two.
Taking the ball away after a free kick's been given.
Yeah, which is a form of dissent in itself.
Yeah, but yeah.
So in this other category, you'd expect quite a high percentage of those to be chatting to the referee when you shouldn't be. So only Leyton Orient have received more other bookings than we have. So that absolutely proves the point in that, yeah, we're picking up far more than our fair share of those. Who do you think are the lowest two teams for this? So which teams have picked up the fewest number of bookings for dissent and or other?
Does it include managers? Or is it just players?
In fact, this must just be players.
So Rotherham's one of them then.
Yeah.
If they included manager, it'd be a booking every game. But he picks up the bookings so his players don't have to. And the other one, Bolton?
Stevenage. So Stevenage, Rotherham have only picked up 5. We've picked up 18. And these are teams that commit more fouls than us overall, pick up more bookings than us overall, that are not for dissent. These are teams that generally are renowned for being a bit thuggish at times, but they're smart about it. They're smart. They know when to button it. They know when to not complain. They know how to do it. That's game sense. That is game management, dark arts, however you want to call it. It's not nice, but don't do it well and you get punished. And we don't do it well.
So the next thing we want to move on to, because I'm just going to settle with the fact that I was right. I didn't need the explanation of the stats. I quite like that. But that's good because my eye test is backed up by stats, which is brilliant. And again, Stu, that's 42 minutes to clip that up. So next up, you wanted to talk about the last 10 games, kind of where it leaves us and sort of moving forward as well, didn't you? Because we've only won 1 in the last 10. I mean, it was a good win. We probably only played really badly once in the last 10, in my opinion, because Saturday we didn't play badly until somebody was sent off. So there is a caveat there, but we were bad at Shrewsbury, or we weren't able to do what we wanted to do at Shrewsbury. Is this run the same as the run last year, where we were losing games and weren't really in it? And where does it leave us, Chris, going forward into the new year after Rotherham?
Well, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting discussion to have because we're at the halfway point. We've played 23 games so far this season. 10 games is a big chunk of fixtures. That's almost a quarter of the season. We've only won 1 in those. And I think there's only so long that you can say we're playing okay. You have to pick up points at some point, don't you? And we did against Reading. We were in the playoffs just 2 matches ago, which is mad to think, isn't it? We're 12th now. And just 2 games ago, we're all on top of the world, feeling pretty good about things going into Christmas in 6th position. And two back-to-back defeats have really changed the feeling, I think, around where we are. You know, I've started to see a few tentative question marks over certain players, even tentative question marks over the manager, which I know you and I absolutely will massively disagree with. But I think you can't ignore the fact we've only picked up 7 points from a possible 30. And I think that's worth pointing out. So, yeah, how do you feel we are primed for the rest of the season? And how do you feel about the current run?
I feel we are where I expected us to be, but we've taken a slightly different route to get there. I maybe expected us to be 10th rather than 12th, but the fact we were 6th 2 games ago has underlined the fact that this is a tight league. I think the next 3 or 4 games are absolutely critical, because I think if in the next 3 or 4 games we don't pick up, let's say, 2 wins and a draw, then right at that point, you're then talking 13, 14 games on a bad run. 10 games is not quite quarter of a season, but it's not a million miles off. It's when I say it's not worrying, because I don't think performances have been awful. And I know people will tend to shoot us down a little bit for saying that. But I really don't think we've been that bad in most of the games. I don't think if you looked at I want to say stats, but if you looked at some of the balance of play and some of the matches that we've been involved in where it's been really narrow, actually the 7 in 30 return probably isn't a fair reflection. It's almost like losing a game 5-0 when actually you should have lost it 2-1. The fact is, we haven't been on a great run, but I don't think it's at this moment it's not worrying. But I think that we are just about on that tipping point where when does it become not just a blip, but when does it become something else? When does it become actually we're now in a rut? Actually, we are on a little bit of a downward spiral. I don't think we are right now. I think that with each game you can look at something and go, Odafing's attack on Jackson was a reason for the Rotherham game. Lack of clinicality, which isn't a word, but I use it now, in front of goal is why we didn't win Wrexham. Yesterday, the red card to Ethan Aran is why we didn't. But it's when you're looking for, when you've got a fundamental reason for not getting a point in one game or two games, I get it. But when it becomes 3, when it becomes 4, when it becomes 5, there's only so many individual instances where you go, well, why is this happening? So, like, we've been wasteful here. We were wasteful, by the way, against Shrewsbury, where we should have won the game. So I'm not massively concerned because I don't think we're relegation fodder. And even if we were to finish 12th to 14th this season, there would be meltdown everywhere else. But I would just go, right, okay, this was a tough division. Next year we go again, kind of thing. So that's where I think we are. I've just noticed we've only got about 14 minutes left as well, which is worrying considering what we've got to cover.
Rotherham won't take a huge amount. I don't think. I think this is probably the more important conversation because I think I'm with you in that I don't think it's massively concerning, but I'm more concerned now than I was a couple of games ago, obviously. And yeah, I think we're maybe at that kind of that tipping point now because. If you're looking at this from outside looking in, which is what you try and do when you're analysing any other opposition. So let's try and do that to Lincoln City at this halfway point in the season. In terms of the last 10 games, there's a couple of them have been disappointing performances, but on the whole, there's been really positive spells in most of those games. Now, it's almost impossible for any League One team to be able to play well for 90 minutes, but you need to play well for maybe 60 or 70 to be able to win a game, and we've done that. I actually think we've done that reasonably okay over the last 10 games. And what you'd normally say, if I was looking at this outside looking in, would be performance metrics are okay. Again, a little bit unlucky at times, but there's maybe a couple of question marks here and there. You'd expect results to become more consistent with nothing else changing. Let's look at the process rather than the outcome. Outcome says 7 points from 10 games. That's alarming. Performance metrics indicate what you can predict points returns to be over the rest of the season. But there's one big factor that doesn't take into consideration, which is confidence. And that's, you can't put a number on confidence, can you? And I think you can justify it, like you said, the defeat against Rotherham, the defeat against Wrexham, where we deserved all 3 points and that scored, basically their only shot on target in the whole game they scored. There's a few games where we've played well, but it doesn't take that long for that confidence to start to slip, and that does impact performance level. That when you're a centre forward, the goal feels like it's tiny, and it does impact players and teams and fan bases. You feel it in the crowd, don't you? When it's a team that's on a bad run, you feel that kind of nervousness. I really don't want us to be at that point just yet, but I think it's worth pointing out that I'm obviously a big advocate of statistics, but they don't tell us everything. And that confidence, I think we need a confidence building victory soon to be able to get back on track with that, because these last couple of games have been confidence sapping, particularly Shrewsbury, and then just what caused the second half against Bolton. Just a couple of stats before we move on. We're actually underperforming our XG by 12 goals. We've scored 28, should have scored 25, conceded 29, should have conceded 20 to 21. So we're conceding more goals than we should do is the big factor here. But also we're missing big chances. We've missed the 4th most big chances in the whole of League One, despite only creating the 8th most big chances. It's both boxes. It's both boxes. In terms of passing metrics, we give the ball away the second least amount out of any team in the league in terms of actually dispossessed by other teams. That's not about we give the ball to the opposition, the fourth most. But that indicates to me that if we can have a bit more control in games, possession-wise, which we've shown we can do, we're good enough not to lose it because we don't lose the ball when we have it. We give the opposition the ball more than we should do. We're not a million miles away. We're not a million miles away, but we need a confidence building win.
First of all, the confidence boosting win was Reading. We needed to build on that, and we've let that slip. And now that's just one win in 10 rather than it being the turnaround. But secondly, Dean Mason raises what I think it was a point I considered a little bit. So he says, our upturn last season coincided with a 2-week break, which gave us time to reset on the training ground. Now, I get that, but it's this thing that I thought about earlier. Currently, we don't have that buffer. It's game after game, and when you're on a bad run. Now, it's not so much that when you're on a bad run, but what we tend to do every game is plan for the opposition. And it's why when people say, well, why did we pass it on the floor against Reading, but then we play Stevenage and we're going long? And our approach is very much about what the opposition does as about what we do. Whereas if you're Steve Evans, your approach is 99% the same. You know what you're going to do. Somebody has to stop you. Is it easier for a team to build confidence, to build momentum, to build consistency when they don't have to train for an individual game? They're just doing the same things that they do all the time. And is that why we tend to find that we fall away a little bit under last year, to be fair, is different in November and December under Michael Scabala because he had only just come in. But is that why we've tumbled away a bit now? Because actually we're not playing Saturday, Tuesday. And that great run that we were on at the end of last season, arguably, we were playing Saturday quite a bit. There wasn't as many Tuesday night games in there at all. So is it just purely that there are not enough days on the training ground for us to perfect what we want to do when we go out against these teams, leading then to certain people on Twitter saying that we're tactically inept?
I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the answer is yes to a lot of it. I don't think it's as simple as that, because you'll have you'll have certain principles that you want to do in every single game, but you'll adapt certain things depending on the opposition. And then depending on the opposition, you maybe focus more on them or more on yourself. But there are always certain principles that you have as another identity anyway. Michael mentioned that to us mentioned it a few times. But I think there's also the fact is when you are on a slightly sticky run, you're searching for that winning formula, aren't you? So you're likely to change the team and the setup and the lineup and the tactics slightly more so when you're searching for that consistency in performance than when you've already got that consistency in performance and you're getting the results. So I think one maybe leads to the other, but either way, when it is Saturday, Tuesday, and there's not a lot of time on the training ground, that absolutely has an impact on how much preparation you can put into each game. So, yeah, I think we could do with the rest, to be honest. But also, as a player, when you're on a dodgy run, there's nothing you want more than a game as soon as possible to put it right. And we've got 2 back-to-back home games coming up now, and that's really big for us. If we can get a positive couple of results there, 4 points out in the next 2 games, for example, then we'll be okay. If we don't pick up a win in the next 2, then I think we'll start to be a little bit concerned.
We played 6 games that were not on a Saturday after January the 1st last year through to the end of the season. So that's 4 months, 6 games not on a Saturday, but 2 of those were Friday, Monday over Easter. So technically, it was almost like the Friday one is almost like a Saturday one. We'd still have the same week. So technically, we played 5 games that were not on a Saturday. By the time we play Stevenage, which is a Saturday, we will have played, I think it's 8. So we played Rotherham on a Wednesday, Bolton on a Sunday, Shrewsbury on the Thursday. That's 3. Morecambe 4, Rotherham again 5, Wrexham 6, Man City 7, and Chesham on the Monday 8. So since the 1st of November, which is going to be 2 months, we will have played 8 games in midweek. And I think, as Dean's kind of almost pointed out, I think that is a fundamental. Right, we've flown up. We're miles behind here. We might not even be able to do anything on our yearly review at all, but maybe that's what we've just done. We will talk a tiny little bit about Rotherham because there isn't really all that much to say. There isn't a huge difference. We played Rotherham back in 3rd of December, so it's been a month. really nothing's changed much, I don't think, for for Rotherham. I mean, they're still not on a great run. Since they've beaten us, they've won 2, lost 2 and drawn 1. It's, in fact, they've only scored 1 goal in their last 3 games as well. So what are your thoughts on Rotherham, Mr. Lamming?
I think this is all about us, to be honest, because we know what you're going to get with Rotherham. Like you said, there's not a lot of prep here. There's not a lot of insight, really, in terms of how do you set up against Rotherham that we didn't mention a few weeks ago. It's exactly the same. Also, side note, isn't it lovely to see Adam Jackson back on Saturday against, or whatever day it was, Sunday against Bolton? I think it'd be helpful to have him available. Whether he's ready to start or not, I'm not sure, but that he'll certainly, I think he'll be keen to get one back on Rotherham, certainly. But you know what you're going to get with Rotherham, and they're not having a very good season at all. You know, they are 17th in League One. They are actually only 4 points ahead of the relegation zone. I don't think for a second they're going to go down, but they are nowhere near where they'd expect to be. They're tough, though. They're a tough side, and they're the sort of team that when you're not on it and when your confidence is low, can bully teams. So I really hope that we react to this in a really positive way. I think there'll be a lot of players wanting to put things right. You know, we know we've got genuinely good characters in our team and in our backroom staff as well. So I expect to see us reacting in the right way for this game and prepare in the right way. Concern I've got is the fact we had to play 45 minutes for 10 men and how energy sapping that is going into this really busy period with, you know, a quick turnover into the next game. I think that potentially can have an impact. We have to start well. We have to score early, I think, for us to be able to defend stoically and have something to hold on to. I think if we're going to ask us to get something out of this, we have to take the lead in this game. So, yeah, I don't know what to think. It's weird. I was so confident going into Shrewsbury, stupidly, and it scarred me, Gaz. It's really scarred me in regards to having any sort of positivity and optimism going into matches. So I'm scared about it. And I'm scared. That's what I am. I'm terrified about this game because I don't want any more negativity to be surrounding the football club. But I'm scared what a loss can do.
Okay, so let's try and inject a little bit of positivity. And I'll answer this question first because you don't know I'm going to ask it. I'm going to ask you for your favourite goal of 2024. And I'm going to answer my favourite goal of 2024, not because of the actual goal. It was a very good goal, but because of the way that individual goal made me feel. And it was the goal that made me feel we were going to the playoffs and that we might be going to the championship. And it was a goal I watched with you. And it was a goal that one of those games, it was like a lower kind of end Nathan Arnold goal against Gateshead, you know, where you haven't been that great, you're desperate for the win, you know that a win puts you in contention, you know that a defeat takes it out of your hands. It was the final goal that we scored last season. That should help everybody out. It was Freddie Draper away at Cheltenham. And that was my favourite. It wasn't my favourite moment. My favourite moment actually came against Portsmouth when all of the fans clapped after Portsmouth scored their second goal, because unity is something that you get so rarely in football. So rarely. We've seen that this weekend. There is no unity. People that I will sit with on a bus and drink with in a pub and banter with and all of that sort of stuff. Not when you say at each other's throats, not in an angry way, but you know what? It's just disagreeing, and it's passive aggressive, agree to disagree. So that unity of that kind of ripple of applause all the way around the ground was a moment that just grabbed me by the bollocks and twisted. You know what I mean? It brought tears to my eyes, that sort of thing. But the goal was Freddie Draper's. And I just remember, I think it was 1-1 at the time. We were desperate for it. If we hadn't scored that goal, we would have been outside the top 6 going into the final game of the season. We needed to beat Portsmouth. It didn't all happen. That goal and that kind of week or the days after that was just like, we could actually do it. We could actually do it. And it's a moment of real belief. And you don't get those very often. And so Freddie Draper's goal against Cheltenham is my goal of 2024.
Oh, I like that. Mine's Ethan Arahan against Wickham, because for the opposite reason, we all felt that game was such a had massive importance riding in it, because we'd been on such a poor run, but we also knew we'd have that. It was a couple of weeks, I think, wasn't it, without a game being able to spend on the training ground. It was the first couple of week period that Michael Sweetwater had with the team at all. And we were pretty good in that game. We were much improved in that game compared to where we were. And that last minute equaliser just felt like a massive shot in the arm. Now, maybe hindsight's helping this a little bit because of what it then happened afterwards. But, we're talking about it retrospectively. And it was that kind of catalyst that started it out on that fantastic run, which ultimately ended up with us almost getting in the playoffs. But yeah, I agree with you. Overriding moment of the season was the same as yours against Portsmouth. And I love what you said about unity, because it makes such a difference. We had it under Danny and Nicky. They built it. I think the fans played their part, didn't they? Ultimately, the bit under them that really sticks to me is when we lost to Crewe at home at 4-0 and we're still singing their name. Like, that just doesn't happen in football grounds. And that felt so special at that time. Weird that something lost stuck in my mind as a positive moment of unity. But it's so powerful. And I agree with you, even though it was united in disappointment and appreciation of what had kind of the hope that they'd given us, the enjoyment it had given us. It was a beautiful moment. I know it's unrealistic, but I just wish football was always like that. I wish supporting your team always meant supporting, and rather than criticising. And why do you have to have an opinion? Why can't it just be backing players, backing teams when they're struggling? That makes such a difference. It's so difficult to do. It's not in anyone's human nature. But when you just see those little glimpses of it, I think that's what makes it so special, is because it's so rare. But in all honesty, I think that's what we need now. If we can get a little bit of unity in the fan base and just support the lads. We've got 2 back-to-back home games. Let's support our football club. We all want the same thing. So let's support them and get there together. And it shows that we can do it, because that was a special moment I'd never seen at a football match before. And I doubt we'll see again against Portsmouth last season. But it shows that as a fan base, we certainly can be united. So, as we ended the 23-24 season, with a highlight of our 2024 calendar, wouldn't it be nice to go into 2025 with a show of unity as well and support?
Don't say, why do people have to have opinions? That's why we're here now.
No, you know what I mean, though, don't you?
If we just came on here and we're like just completely rose tinted, we would actually fit into what a lot of people have been accusing me of today. Not criticising.
No, not having opinions is probably not the right way of putting it. Obviously, everyone.
I agree.
I'm not saying that. I just meant.
Yeah, I get you.
Can we, for 90 minutes, can we put that aside and just support the team, and then after the game discuss it? In
fairness, I didn't hear an awful lot of dissenting voices or booing or anything during the game yesterday. I thought our support was very, very good yesterday, and I didn't hear boos at the final whistle, because believe me, by that point I was already in the concourse. So I'm sure there may have been.
I'll just say this isn't a criticism, by the way, at all. It was just it's something that I really like. I like the positive more than the negative, and the power of positivity and support can be really tangible on the pitch as well. So this isn't me calling out or criticising anyone that's being negative, but for 90 minutes, let's just get behind the lads. And if we could do that
every traveller, isn't it?
Maybe hippie, so. Yeah, it's a bit hippie. I suppose I maybe am at times, but I want to support the football club. We all want our football club to be successful, so let's back them when they need us.
Well, you've got Steve, you've got Sue, you've got John. They're all happy with you. A couple of other key moments that people have mentioned. Carl Mercer liked Jack Moylan's performance at Barnsley. That was a really good one. Sue says hers is the same as yours, Chris. It felt like a win going from the ground, so that's Wickham. Ben has said, for me, same as me, same goal and moment for me. Fred versus Cheltenham was amazing, and that moment against Portsmouth was magical. Stu liked the yogurt chat bombs at Mowgli, which was one where I think I ended up with yogurt on my beard. I have had some feedback from people on Discord. So tomorrow we'll be doing a little bit of a highlights article with some other kind of supporter moments, best moments, worst moments, all that sort of thing. Well, that was the last Stacey West podcast of 2024. So at Christmas, we obviously thanked everybody for listening and all that sort of stuff, because you do it at Christmas. And then New Year comes around and you do it all again just a week later. I think it's more appropriate at the end of a year. And it's been a good year on the podcast. We've brought Stu in, who has done absolutely brilliantly with our some of our digital output. Between the four of us, me, Chris, Ben and Charlie, hopefully We've kept some regular, consistent content, some excellent previews, which I have nothing to do with, some podcasts. But most of all, it's you guys. Like, we let you know half an hour before we record that we're going to record, and we always have 50 or 60 people come on. There's upwards of 1,000, sometimes as many as 1,500 listening and watching in across the podcast and on YouTube, it's just absolutely phenomenal. And you know what, there are times, I don't know about the others, there are times where this actually is tough. It's tough to do. And that's not because we don't enjoy it, but it's because we play a game. I've got to get up on the Sunday. I've got to write it up. Then you're on the podcast. You've got to prepare for it. We've got jobs. We've got other things that we do as well. And I think that if it wasn't for you guys, if it wasn't for the 50 odd people on here that have watched, and the 1,500 others that listens, and those that debate and interact on in the right way, and especially Patreons as well, we wouldn't do it. We don't do this because we want people to know our opinion. We do it because people want to know our opinion. And that's incredibly humbling. And it's 2024. I think we started it in 2018. So it's 6 years now almost of people tuning in and listening, and coming up to us at games and saying hello and all that sort of stuff. So we say it every year, we say it every Christmas, but genuinely, if you're listening at home now, thank you. If you're watching live, thank you. And we will endeavour to keep up the regular content and high quality. We might, if we can convince him, tone the stats down a little bit though. No.
I nodded. I didn't hardly say anything stats related. I didn't discuss anything about Bolton in terms of stats today. That was all you.
You have genuinely the number of people that will come up and they start with talking about how much they like the podcast, and then they'll say Chris's stats, and it's never negative. And the fact is, we all try and do something a little bit different. I mean, Ben is the kind of the first class presenter, and Charlie kind of offers an alternative. He's obviously not about now, so it's kind of almost an exile. Chris's stats, Steve Barton thinks I've been harsh. I don't know what it is I bring, just a pretty face, maybe something like that. But we do try and bring something different. Look, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, this has been episode 345 of the Stacey West podcast. By the time we hit 346, it'll be a new year, and hopefully we will start that with 3 points. And the final thing I'm going to say is 1 hour and probably a couple of minutes. We play Rotherham on Saturday, and I haven't once mentioned Baron Greenback. Thank you for watching, and up the imps.
Up the imps.